We're good. We're live.
You asked. You asked.
Yeah. Oh, that's prudent to ask. Hey, we're going, guys. Going live. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order this special joint meeting of the Board of Commissioners and the County Council of Johnson County on this Monday, April 25th, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. And before we get started, I do want to make sure that the boards understand that we do have a planning and zoning meeting in here at 6 o'clock, and we need to probably clear here by 1:15. So be prepared to speak fast and get it going, and let's not do any grandstanding today, please. If you don't mind. Other than that, Luke, I guess, or who we start with? Drake Road property.
Guess that'd be me. You see the handouts that we gave you. This will just be put in your bank right now and just think about it. I think it's going to change maybe a little bit later when we get further into this discussion. But you see the new facilities down at the bottom in the green, or sorry, all the way at the bottom in the black. Drake Road property, new health department, corners office, 15,000 square foot, and the number that's associated with that. So that's just to keep right now. I think it's going to be contingent upon some of the other things up on the top of the list that you have. And we'll get into some of those discussions here in just a little bit. So that's about it on Drake Road. It is currently, we have stopped the project. The only thing that we have done is did some soil borings. And that would either, if we retain that property, we keep it, we're going to use it. If we sell it or move it, it's still going to be used in the sale of the property. So that's where we're at right now. Other than that, it's as I was instructed, it's on hold. So we're just sitting on it right now, waiting for a decision with some of these other items. So that's all I have for Drake Road.
Any questions, concerns, gentlemen, on anything there? No?
Just to point out that I gave everybody a copy of a worksheet that we'll be able to plug in a lot of those numbers if we choose to use that worksheet to help us work through in an efficient manner. So that's what the second handout is.
Thank you, sir.
Got it. Guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think the big picture is where do we want to see this go, right? The development of a campus, relocation of services and or departments to a more campus setting that's on a larger site, possibly easier to construct or build on. Upgrade facilities, not only for those agencies or departments that would potentially move there, but also for highway department. We could possibly have it more centrally located, increase land size to account for growth. So that's the part where with potential ARPA funds, and I say that knowing that there are limitations on discretionary and some other regulatory limitations, but that's kind of what prompted this for me, was to say, is this the time to develop that vision and then contemplate where the future goes, and is now the time to at least start that process.
And that moves into the top part of our sheet.
Okay, right on.
So do you want to, do you just want to go right into the top part, or how do you want to do this?
That's it.
Or do you want to follow the discussion points and fill in the blanks? Because that's pretty,
I mean, you can, the numbers are going to be the same pretty much. What
Well,
you're going to get right here.
yeah, it's putting it more just to option one. This was discussion notes. Option one is building a new campus at the current highway site. The campus could include structures for the health department, coroner's office, and the morgue, new employee clinic, adult probation, and adult and community corrections facility, office space for expansion of other government services such as WIC, and space for future county needs. And in this option, it requires relocation of the existing highway structures and construction of additional structures needed by the highway department. Purchase of land for the highway campus, you've got that here. which we can plug in, and then construction of a new highway office space, 2 new salt barns, new expanded maintenance facilities, new equipment storage facilities, new fuel island, fuel tank relocation, wherever that goes, cost. And it goes on for engineering, architectural remediation, environmental issues, construction of structures, land preparation. And the second page addresses staying with a Drake Road and what we have to do to upgrade the current highway facility, and then also looking at the needs for the employee health clinic, separate from the health department coroner's office and future office needs, and highway campus improvements, and then the big one, relocate existing adult community corrections. So that this has all the costs, but these are the items that we need to, make some kind of decisions on, and it gives us a comparison of the two. That's why I did that. So if you want to use it, fine. If not, fine.
Okay.
And basically, we'd just be taking these costs and filling in that, because I think everything that we're talking about is already on the list
Yeah.
that Kevin passed out. So just kind of however you guys want to organize it in your own way.
I guess the big question would be, are we in the mood to look at a campus facility, or does this number set everybody back a little bit? So, and that, I will caveat this by saying these are today's prices, Monday, the 25th. So I don't know what inflation's going to do. I mean, we built some contingency in, as you can see. Whether that'll be enough, I don't know. But that's where we're at right now. So
Can I ask you that Rob alluded to this, that there certainly is some ARPA funds for the health department, but mental health is a potential ARPA fund, and community corrections is a lit fund. So when we look at these total numbers, we're not talking about a general. There are some funds that would, correct? Is that your understanding, that there are funds that would fund whatever, 5, 6, 7, 8 million of the 40, what is it, 41 million basically for the two?
Yeah, I think that's yet to be seen as far as the ARPA funds. And as far as that, I think you've got to look at maybe at this point in time, I know we've put 3 from the ARPA committee, we put 3 million toward mental health at this point in time. I think you can pretty well count on that. Other than that, until we get through that process, I don't know how much I would apply to this.
But the community corrections could be a potential full funding.
It
Lit.
can,
It
yeah,
lit.
lit,
You
yeah.
can, right.
you
Yeah,
can
but-
do the jail lit, correctional, you can use some of that, and that's, some of that can be utilized for that. And I think that would be more of your line to see where you want to go with that. I know there was talk of an edit tax, that's more for roads. I think we'll get into that a little bit later. But this is this $30 million number right here is really, if you start that campus, and there would be room to expand for other services at a later date.
I think probably what we need to try to determine this afternoon is where people's positions are on what direction we should go, if we should look at highway property. I know at one time Commissioner Walls was working with the state on something, and I don't know if that's still something we can look into.
I would say no with our current, what we're trying to do is keep our highway department more centrally located. There was discussion with the state when I was dealing with them on relinquishment and all that. There was talk of that, but they wanted to go up more closer to an interstate, be it 65 or 69. That was basically their location that they were wanting to look at, is somewhere up in there. And at that time, we were entertaining that thought, but you heard a little bit of the relinquishment this morning. It just got really complicated with everything we were dealing, who owns the building, who leases from who. zero lot line with the state. It got a little bit complicated. So they didn't want to lease from us and I didn't really want to lease from them. So,
I don't disagree with that.
so that's where it just kind of stopped, died in the water, I would say.
So looking for, a consensus, I really like this. I think it's what we've envisioned. I do have one question about where that county highway is now and all that property. Is that going to be an issue with the floodplain or floodway in any way?
There is approximately, Luke, correct me if I'm wrong here, there's 11 acres on that site. 9 acres are not in the floodplain and 2 acres are in the floodplain. If that's,
Is it a floodway or a floodplain?
I think that lot's bigger than that, is it?
it's 11 acres.
Is it? I thought it was bigger than that. Does it show bigger than that on Beacon? Thank you. So it actually shows bigger than that on Beacon, than 11 acres. About 22, 20, somewhere in there, 2022 from what I remember.
But a
Because it's
lot
in
of it
two
is,
parcels. A lot of that is-
you can't
right.
utilize it. It's all woods and creek.
But getting back to consent, I like it. Like Rob's analysis on the highway funds, I think it's well thought out. And I think it, especially in the area of mental health facility and health clinic, it's doing what we're doing in the future.
In this breakdown, I know we've got the health clinic shown there, but where would the coroner's office be in the?
It's the very bottom.
Well, we could make, there's two different
That's utilizing
options.
the Drake Road property though.
Two different, that's Drake Road. They're combined in one building right there.
Right,
Uh,
but if we
You
go
would-
to this other plan. Drake
You would
Road-
go to a separated building for just the coroner's office, I would
Okay.
assume. I mean, it is a unique service, but maybe a, 2,500, 3,000 square foot.
So somewhere
building.
on that complex though.
Yes.
That we would, I was just trying to
Yes.
clarify that so everybody understood, because I did not see that on here.
Does it change? You just see from 15,000 feet on the combined health office and coroner's office up to 12,000 for the health clinic. So,
And I do like the idea of relocating. Because I think the pumps and all the things that deal with fuel are gonna have to be replaced and might as well do away with them while we're doing away with them. Make it more usable.
And I agree, yeah, that
we're pushing the envelope.
Luke's, yeah, what's the lifetime on those tanks and things? Where we at? Do you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, you might as well. We may have more for you.
Oh, he gets into this, talk to.
Luke Maston, Highway Supervisor. The tanks are fiberglass, so those have a pretty long lifespan. We did have a project several years ago where we repaired some of the fittings above the tanks. My main concern is everything that's above ground right now. The fuel island and the pumps themselves. We had our fuel contractor come out a few weeks ago because we've been having some issues with a couple of the pumps, and we're at the point with one of them that it needs to be replaced. So there are some upcoming costs to the pumps alone, just due to their age, that we're gonna have to take care of, and it's potentially more than we have available in the gasoline surcharge line item right now. But canopy is aging. The islands, we've done some in-house repairs to them, but we have a drainage problem and have some water that's running underneath them that we've not been able to fix because of some issues with the canopy. So yeah, realistically, we probably have a little more time on what's above ground, but it's going to need to be replaced pretty soon.
If we relocate that, can those tanks be reused since they're fiberglass or no? Because we've got to get them out of there anyway. correct?
Maybe it would, I mean, we'd have to be very careful removing them, making sure that we didn't damage them. Now, it is simpler to have above ground storage tanks than it is underground storage tanks. There are certain inspection requirements that go along with the underground storage tanks, and As long as you have above ground tanks that have secondary containment, then that is a viable option. But we're talking about large tanks as well. We have two 10,000 gallon tanks, one for diesel and one for unleaded. Right now, we average about 6 days on new fuel deliveries for unleaded. Diesel just dependent upon construction season or winter snow plowing, but unleaded, we're on about a 6-day cycle for refill.
Do you have a dimension on the tanks and what they are?
I could measure real quick on Beacon. They're under the concrete pad. I can check that.
Okay.
I know that.
I'm talking for the above ground. What would be
Oh.
talking size wise? I know we've had all kinds of issues with our underground storage tanks, so I don't think
Yeah.
anybody would be objectionable to going above ground, especially if it's in a contained area,
Um,
contained area.
They would take up a lot of room. I mean, that is obviously the benefit of being underground. It's they're out of the way for the most part, even though we're limited on what we can do above them. But it would be pretty large, pretty good sized storage area, plus the secondary containment. And then obviously we're going to probably want to keep at least a buffer area between any vehicles or any use from those tanks. So it could be a cheaper option, but there are some considerations that go along with that as well.
But if you would go to a site that just had the storage tanks and the pumps, you won't have the buildings in the way.
Mhm.
You know, fencing, things like that. At that
Yes.
point in time, I don't know that it would. And basically, I would assume you'd run your lines underground over to the pumping station
That-
itself.
Yeah, that's how we're set up right now.
So-
The fuel site controller is in the highway office. We have a lot of underground piping for wiring, but both to the tank meters and then to the pumps themselves. To manage.
I really don't, if you look at where we've got it now and how it's set up, I don't know that we'd be using any more space than that with above ground tanks.
Probably not much.
Consider that fenced area right there. that
Yeah.
goes around.
I would say the overall footprint would probably be pretty similar.
Commissioner Walls, on your, down at the bottom of it, the actual relocation of all facilities on the campus would be 37 million. Is that, how am I reading that correctly?
30.
Well, isn't the Drake Road?
Well, you look up here, you got the health clinic.
But you don't have the coroner's office.
So, yeah, the coroner's office would have to be added to that. But
Yeah.
at that point in time, it's a separate facility. The size of it's going to be smaller.
Well, I'm saying that approximately 37.
Uh,
If-
No,
It wouldn't be,
because
no, it
it-
wouldn't be that. It'd be, I would say, maybe $1 million more for that 3,000 square foot building.
Well,
What do you think, Wes? I mean, you can do- you can do the
385
math
square
real quick.
foot.
You're the math guy. Just do the
385. I'd
440.
use 385.
385 square foot.
Yeah, I think what Councilor Deere is getting at is the total of the,
the complete relocation is 37 million.
Well, yeah, if you take the 60 set or 6,750,000 for the
Right.
Drake Road, which would go down because that would only be
Right.
a coroner's office. at
Yeah,
that
But if
point.
everything went in there, it would be 37 million or approximately, just two figures. That's all I'm getting.
yes, you're reading that correctly. It's 30 million for the everything that's listed on the highway department site, which includes a health clinic, which is
Clinic.
not the same as the health department.
Department and more.
And then second floor flex space over the health clinic. I just threw that in,
Which could be,
community corrections and a mental health
yeah,
facility.
which can be WIC. or
Right.
Whatever.
And then the health department can either be on Drake Road property or on the highway department. property.
But the purpose of creating the campus is to eliminate Drake Road as a potential property and then sell that and put that back in.
That's
And then-
right.
And the other revenue source that we haven't alluded to is the adult probation selling of that property, which is a revenue stream also. Because that, and here, that's also a relocation possibility of putting them in the same area as adult community corrections. So the 37 million to do a complete campus swap would be 37 million plus 11 million.
I think so, Ron. I think what they're saying is taking the Drake Road property out of the equation, you've got 29.6 million roughly in all of the project excluding community corrections. And that's 12.1 million, 1.5 million that could go to lit. So that's how, I mean, I think we have to look at it, breaking these up, 29.6 million and 12.1 million with the caveat that the coroner's office may add another million to that 29.6.
Yeah. Plus 11 million.
Yeah.
And where the funds come from is another issue. It's just what the total potential cost is.
Now, that 11 million was in the numbers I just gave.
Well, it's not the way he's figuring
No,
it.
it's not.
It's not in it.
Do what? The highway department relocation?
Is not in the 30 million. It's in addition to.
I know. But I said 12.6 million roughly for the entire project, excluding the 12.1 million for community corrections that could come out of the lit.
Yes.
So that includes both the 30 million and the 11.7 million.
Yes, that is correct.
Is the number for community corrections, does that include the money they've saved over whatever, 10, 15 years? Or is that in addition to the money they saved?
Saving, I guess I would ask, what would be the saving? Where have they saved money?
Many years ago, I was told when Albert Hessman ran it, he had over $1 million saved.
No, that's gone.
Okay. All right.
Yep, I'm getting a no in the back of the room. I'm
It's-
getting a no. I
yeah.
think we're correct. There's zero.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's-
And another question kind of along those lines. I never heard anything about selling off the adult probation building. Is that,
Like I said, this is
Ron, where did
an
you come up
open
with that?
chalkboard.
No, not adult probation, the Drake Road property and excuse me, yes, the bank over here, the adult probation, yes.
Yes.
where did you come up with that? I mean,
Why would we keep it if adult probation went over? to
I didn't know
community
that they were going over there.
Well,
So
they
is
they
that,
can.
Does the 18,000 square feet, that does not include adult probation? Yes. So there is no adult probation figured in here in
Yeah.
this.
understood?
Then we need to add it. What I'm saying is putting all those in a campus environment instead of being spread out like it is.
It's huge. How many square feet? Did we figure that square footage over there? Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was there. Yeah, and it's,
And it's putting it
Wall to
near,
wall.
it's putting it near the whole campus theory of putting community corrections and adult probation and all those facilities at one location.
I think you'd get an argument from adult probation over that, unless you move a court out there. I think you're moving them away from the court unless you don't have an issue with that. We have them here, so.
We love, I love the building right now. We don't have any room left. That's already with some additions. We're already short. We need some other offices.
Okay.
So
So you would be in favor of moving?
we would to be with community corrections so that the services are very similar at times.
Right.
And it would make sense together to share some classroom space and conference rooms. So yes, we would be in favor of moving.
Being in that area.
And that's where my suggestion came from, is that the congruity of services are there, and it could be some court opportunities for a court to be in there also.
Yeah, 20,000.
But you have a sale of that property also.
$9 million.
Yeah.
So that would be approximately another 9 million that would need to be input into this. Don't know what you'd get out of that bank property. Not much, probably, with it probably going back to the city of Franklin is who'd end up probably getting that somehow. So
50 million.
that's something we will really need to discuss as far as that, but I agree. I know you guys are tight over there, so we specifically walked through there to see that, so. Anything else?
Nope. So I think the new total we can work off of 49 million. And that is not split out with any of the jail lift being considered for paying. That's just giving you an overview of where we're at and what this campus would entail with moving highway and everything else goes along with it. So,
It provides the scope, which is what we were looking for, is the scope of what it would cost to do it. Or the reverse logic is, okay, if we don't do it, then what is the cost to do Drake Road and community correction and improvements to the current highway department? And those figures are all there. The campus is 49 million. If you take the reverse, if Drake Road stays where it's at and you create a new community corrections, which supports itself by lit, then it's still the same cost. It's just what column you put them in. So then it's a philosophical discussion of what is the best way to do it. Correct? And then we have to determine the source of funding, which reduces the burden after we've taken community corrections, possible lit, and we've taken whatever is possible from ARPA funds.
yeah, it is correct.
I guess one note that probably needs to be made, though, I'm not sure that the gas station allowance of 450 is probably going to be enough. And I think probably from what you're hearing, Wes, you would probably agree with that. Yeah, so I'm thinking probably double that or a little more at this point, especially if we can't reuse the tanks and what we have. So basically we're buying new. So might want to keep that just in the back of your mind that it's probably going to go up.
And once everybody comes to that consensus, we can narrow down these and dial them in a little bit more, but this is giving you basically the general concept. If you're looking at wanting to create this campus over there, if that's the direction we want to go, then we need to look at that and we can start nailing down and getting some more critical numbers. But the way it stands right now, these are budgetary items and we're putting it out here.
I think what I'd like just for us to think about, and we're always trying to look forward to see, how much farther down the road we can kick the can sometimes. And I will just say this is, I know as a commissioner, the past kicking of the can down the road has really affected our jobs and what we've had to do to try to catch up. And in my opinion is, I think this is something that we're going to be seriously considering, at least, if not right now, 4 to 5 years down the road from now. And I would just ask that we don't kick that can down the road again. I think, we've got a willing, able body of elected officials now that really have looked forward. And I'm talking about the council and the commissioners. We look forward very well. And I think that we don't want to take the chance of losing that foresight down the road by allowing this to pass away from our responsibilities. So just please keep that in the back of your mind. My whole reason for coming here was to move the county forward and try to get some things done that matter. And I think these are some real important areas that we need to look at in Johnson County right now. And that's just an opinion, but I just know the way I'm looking at it and trying to get things done. I just don't want the next commissioner that comes in after me to look back at me and say I didn't do my job. And I think we should all look at it that way if we can come to that attitude. But sorry, just want to get that out there.
Agreed. I think we need to look at a new location for the highway department and create a campus over there for the justice, community correction, everything together.
I think to point out that in this kind of options, right, are things that we don't even currently provide or have available that would be new services to address needs of a growing community. The health clinic, with our growing staff, full-time employees at the county are up 550, part-time 700, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. So you think about that as a benefit to our employee base. The community corrections facility today, I think it's 12,000 square feet. So maybe 10. So we're looking at quite an expansion of that, which is I think a huge part of that criminal justice cycle of getting folks back out standing on their own. The mental health facility treatment transitional housing component of this, brand new and different, and beyond need, in my opinion. How that all plays out, I don't know, but so the relocation is, to me, exciting because of what it opens up. The new structures, housing services and departments that currently aren't even here today, pushing our community forward. I love that approach. I like that there is funding available, which we can start to tranche out or pie out, however you want to refer to it. And Commissioner Barrett, couldn't agree more with your comments about addressing needs today. They're never fun when you look at dollar tags associated with this, but I feel like we got a head start, right? I feel like ARPA's helping a little bit, jail lit's helping a little bit, and overall, I'm supportive of continuing with the development of a campus. I would love to see our other properties put back on private developers on the tax roll. Don't know that can't control things like that right now, but that would be certainly my desire, and prepare us for the next 20 to 30 years, if not longer.
Thank you, sir. I agree.
Well, I just wanted to point out that I had met with the new, it's not community, what's the new not circuit court, the new court services staff. And that's where the idea came up about adult probation being brought under. I'm sorry if it came out a new idea. I didn't realize it was, but it made sense. I didn't realize that building was go back to the city of Franklin. I thought it would go on the tax rolls, but
I would assume that the city of Franklin will want to purchase that building. I would assume.
But anyway,
Since their parking lot backs right up to it.
They certainly convinced me that being in a general complex would be better for their delivery of services. And then the other thing that I pointed out, that was pointed out to me by visit with Luke, is that if he stays there, the cost for him to stay there are almost all the cost to move, because you have to have new salt barns, both of them. We have to protect our equipment. It's rusting, sitting out, and talked to Commissioner Barrett about this. I mean, all the things that need to be done are going to have to be done if we stay there.
Right.
And we have to anticipate that cost, and we've not done anything for the future needs of the community by staying there. And we're going to have still address those future needs somewhere. If not there, then where? So, I'm supportive of it, and then I think our challenge as a council is to consider how we're going to fund it. And it's going to take some creative financing at the least, but we have the potentials that we haven't had in the past that will reduce it somewhat.
And originally, the Drake Road property was supposed to be community corrections and adult probation. And that's what a lot of people forget. It wasn't the health department and the coroner's office. It just became that because there wasn't enough room that we could get built on a footprint to put community corrections and adult probation in the same building due to the needs of the space. So this is something we saw a long time ago when we took the Drake Road property. We just didn't realize we were going to have the restrictions that we were going to have on that footprint of that piece of property. So it's not, I don't think it's that we missed a lot. We just tried to reutilize that property for the health department and the coroner's office when we found out we couldn't get what we wanted done there. So bad on our part, I guess, for not thinking that just maybe I guess it was more of trying to save some money at this time, but we just maybe missed it a little bit. So I think this helps correct that problem.
How about that end of the table? Pete, what's your?
I'd like to take things way back, and can you kind of, Brian, or Commissioner Walls, can you tell us why we need to move off that property? Is it too small? Is the ground polluted or something, or?
Which property?
Well, where community corrections is, where the highway department is, why is it necessary to move off that property? Is it just too small or what?
No, it's not. I think we're just looking at consolidating this campus onto one parcel that is contingent with the jail right next door. It just worked, instead of taking this facility and putting it someplace else, I guess, location. It would be easier to take highway out of there. And you've got that 9 acres of developable land right there that we can utilize with the jail. Building a campus where all services are going to be more
Okay.
centrally located than they are now.
So we're only talking about moving the highway department and then putting these other.
Backfilling with all
departments.
these other buildings,
I
yes.
see. I understand.
So that's what, we've just got that property available.
Mhm.
And highway, I think, I'm going to probably speak out of turn here a little bit, has just been hobbled together over the years because it continually grows. And you're putting things in places they really shouldn't be. The flow through there is not the greatest. Salt barn was thrown up. You know, it's always been just kind of Band-Aid patches as it goes along, and it's starting to show. Our equipment sets out. It shouldn't set out. It should be covered, it should be protected.
Right.
Because that's an asset of the taxpayer. And we,
So once the highway department leaves, then there's going to be plenty of room for these
yes,
other departments.
Yeah, and the original intent on community corrections being there was so it was connected to the sheriff's office for convenience because the food supply to community corrections from the sheriff's office. So there would be some kind of walkway either over, under that would connect the two buildings, which would make it much more secure and available for to be used properly. So this is something the sheriff and I talked about. I know it's been a few years ago.
And is it the thought at this point just to leave the juvenile detention center as is, or is it included in this?
No,
master
no, we
plan?
have not looked at juvenile detention. I mean, we've looked at it from a lot of different angles. We looked at it for trying to facilitate that for women's jail. Did not meet state inspection. Boom, that's out. Adult probation, I haven't really got a clear answer if we could utilize it, but the beds in there are built for youth. They're not built for adults.
Sure.
So we've explored a lot of options with that building. Basically leave it as it is. And I would say down the future, we could probably reutilize because they've got a gymnasium in there. They've got a lot of space in that building, and it was built for the purpose at that time.
Right. And it's only being used at half capacity right now. Is that still the case? Okay. Thank you.
If that much.
John, what's your?
Well, I expressed my support for it initially. The logistics, can all be worked out. I think the pieces of the puzzle, which one goes first, which one goes second, I think it's pretty clear, but I won't state it here until we get into it further. But the logistics are very important and can hold costs down. Get a place built, move into it, build another place, move into it. So those type of things need to be worked out, but you've Kevin and whoever else, you've done well to enumerate what we need to do.
Wes has been a big part of this.
Well, he knows how this goes. Thank you, Wes.
President?
Jim?
Yeah, I think this is something that's probably long overdue, just like, we've been saying, using that term, kicking the can down the road.
When do we heard that?
It's been, there's a lot of cans that have been kicked in this county. And unfortunately, I think it takes the right body to have the courage to, or bodies to have the courage to correct the problem. And I don't think anybody likes having to deal with this, but it's something that needs to be done. So I'm interested in hearing more detailed plans on.
What I would recommend that we would do was do a conceptual plan for that property. That would be the next step that I would take, would be a conceptual plan to show you what buildings where flow, and we would have somebody lay that out and do just a conceptual that everybody can see what we've got from parking. We'll run it through Franklin to make sure, because they're going to be the jurisdiction over us on permitting and stuff. Run it through them and get a conceptual, let everybody would know what goes on that property, where it's going to go, and how everything's going to flow. So
Can
that
we,
would be the next step that I would take here.
can we, with that, put together a potential time frame and some specifics on funding? Especially when it comes to the ARPA.
The funding, I think the funding with the ARPA, I mean, there are two of the three really were sitting here. You know, there is some room in there for some ARPA spending, and that's what's the benefit of this right now. The timing seems to be very, very good for us, because we do have some funding that we can use that the taxpayers really aren't going to be responsible for locally. So we can use some of that. The lit's already in place. It can be utilized for some of this. So that's this piece of the puzzle. I think you'll hear another piece of the puzzle here in a little bit when Luke speaks to you. That it's a big day today.
All right, so Commissioner Wells, you're basically, what you're hearing tonight, as I hear it, is Drake Road stop,
It has been stopped.
coming completely.
We'll do, if this, we'll have to fund a conceptual drawing. We'll have
But I mean,
We'll have an architectural firm come in and actually do a conceptual, and we'll give them all the pieces to the puzzle and let them come back with design on that.
I have another input here. I think it's been mentioned that perhaps the coroner's office is kind of low on the priority scale. Not that it's low priority, but it's on, as far as this goes. And did I hear, Rob, did I hear you say that the mental health facility should probably take a backseat to some of these other things?
Oh, no, not at all.
No, he was championing it, really.
Yeah, just the opposite, Pete. I'm sorry if my words were
Oh, that's.
Stated. No, I think with that component of mental health, facility treatment, transitional housing, to me, that kind of rises to the forefront. One, I think it lacks in our community today. And number two, there's ARPA funding available, or would appear to be ARPA funding available in the regulatory bucket for that specific purpose, which kind of, prompts maybe this happening today or next year rather than maybe never. So I'm absolutely for that. I'm not opposed to doing something with the coroner's office from a physical space perspective, wherever it's recommended, we fit that group in here. So.
and there's also, John and Commissioner Wells, there's potential when the mental health and transitional housing is part of what we were talking about on our committee of leveraging other dollars, correct? So there's a potential funding of additional dollars for that from other sources, correct?
There is options to consider other funding sources.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say they're carved in stone.
No,
That's a discussion I want to have with the state of
Yeah.
Indiana.
okay.
So
Well, you said we need to move on. So you got what you need?
yeah, I mean, if we've got it, we'll start putting together some conceptuals, and I think, and I will say this, I think it's beneficial for the county for these two bodies to work so closely together. It's inspiring to me. Instead of fighting, we're working together, trying to come to a great solution for the taxpayers. So. Big benefit.
Pete, where do you weigh in right now on this?
No, I support it. Just there's some questions I hesitate to
Yeah.
bring up in this forum, but at this time anyway, but no, I agree with it. Can we not say that we will burn up all of the ARPA funds doing this project?
No.
So a lot of these things are not eligible with
Yes.
the ARPA.
There are certain parts of this that are
Mhm.
eligible that
Mhm.
fit, that round peg fits in that round hole on
Right.
this.
Can you
Uh,
give a percentage just off the top of your head? I won't hold you to
I'm
it.
gonna say the health clinic is a definite.
Mhm.
I don't think it is.
I don't think the entirety of that project is going to be eligible for the
I
regulatory.
think there's gonna be
bucket.
pieces of, a few of
Pieces
them,
of,
yeah,
okay.
that might be.
The mental health,
Mental health should be 100%.
mental health should fit.
Mhm.
I still
Definitely.
think the health clinic can fit too.
Whether it's
If I could comment-
discretionary or regular.
Brian's name's on that, so I'm gonna push it.
We gotta be careful.
And if I
Yeah, they
could
got my
comment on
family
that.
held hostage.
These ARPA funds, our taxpayers have sent away and they've come back to us with pigeonholes. And mental health fills one of those pigeonholes. And I would like to see the use of ARPA funds, we can divide it up into several little things that have little impacts. Or we can use those ARPA funds as they were intended to make big things
Mhm.
and make big improvements. That'd be my desire, that we use the ARPA funding in this situation to do a great thing.
Pete, maybe I heard your question differently. If you think at the approximately 32 million of ARPA, approximately 10 million is viewed today as discretionary. The rest are what we call the regulatory buckets or the round hole, round peg scenario. So approximately 1/3 of what we've received is viewed today as discretionary versus the other 2/3 that are pretty much handcuffed or restricted.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
With that said, do we want to move on to the next?
Yeah,
so we
I
get
think
that-
I've got my marching orders. Oh, Pam's got.
No, I would just ask, I know you're not gonna take a motion, but if someone could give a synopsis for the minutes as to what we're walking away with here today.
You want to stab at it?
A
Russ?
lot of ideas.
Well, it's your sheet. That's basically what, with the creating the campus as it relates to the combined cost that are all on here.
You could attach that to the minutes.
Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got, we'll attach this, but there's been some changes up here. And we'll make these changes and give you a different revision on this to what that is, so we can do that
The consensus is we would like to move forward.
with the campus.
With the
facility.
campus
and stop the
facility.
Drake Road project.
Yes.
Drake
And I mean,
Road, yeah.
that's probably about as far as we can go until we get this put together, so. Okay, with that said, we need to add to the agenda and have a quick discussion, because we're gonna have to clear out of here pretty soon on Smith Valley Road, because we know that's in everybody's minds right now too. If you guys can be patient with us so we can get that out, because we did not come to a conclusion today at the commissioners meeting, so.
You didn't?
We did not.
Could you, before we start with his presentation, could you summarize what they weren't, I observed it because I was here. Would you summarize what happened this morning? Because we took a consensus. We thought you were going to act and you didn't. So can you summarize?
We basically came to the conclusion to table it and then possibly call a special meeting once we met with the council in this joint meeting to try to come to a conclusion together of what we feel is the best way to handle that. So we didn't really give up. We just kind of want to spread it out a little bit. We honestly just would like some help. And I don't think any of us here want to walk away from not being able to help. So
We
that's
did
kind of
make,
where we came.
we did make one decision today.
We did.
We made a selection on the consultants for design or basically management of the Smith Valley Road project at $3.8 million. We did approve that, but we did not approve the relinquishment deal today.
So we do need some money.
That's kind of what we kind of waited till we were with you guys to
Yeah.
figure this out.
So we want, Luke, can you give a brief explanation? It has to be very brief though, so if we have time to.
You got about
Yes,
10 to 15 minutes.
yes, I don't even
10
need that.
minutes. 10 minutes.
So in the special council meeting last week, there was some requests to get some sort of idea of the benefits and potential maintenance costs of taking on the state roads as part of the relinquishment agreement. The report that was provided to you today is what was presented to the commissioners. I'll hit the high points very quickly. But the summary essentially is that taking into account the dollars that we would receive from the relinquishment agreement and additional annual revenue in our highway funds, coupled with obviously the maintenance costs and potential really needed additional resource costs, the net annualized benefit of accepting the relinquishment becomes outweighed by the net annualized road maintenance cost to the county in 112 years. At that point, the county would be putting out potentially more money than we receive benefit for by accepting the relinquishment. So
is that considering that probably all of these, well, at least 252 and 144 will have to be widened?
So capital projects, like a road widening or reconstruction like that, intersection improvement, curve realignment, those are outside of the scope of maintenance, obviously. If we wanted to pursue capital projects of that manner, I would strongly encourage that we try to utilize the local federal aid program at that time to minimize the impact and needed local dollars to finish a project like that. So our capital projects included in this maintenance estimate? No, they are not. But they are considered, again, with the thought that if we want to pursue a project of that size, we're most likely going to need to apply for federal funding to try to complete those types of projects.
What about project, just simple repaving?
That is considered in the maintenance part of this report. Yes. So the relinquishment offer that we've discussed is $35 million. With that comes what we're estimating at $5.2 million of projects that NDOT currently has in development that they would not finish after the relinquishment date. So there's a calculated, essentially a adjusted relinquishment agreement revenue number of $29,700,000. That's, again, we're talking about net benefits. That 5.2 million is a cost that we would have to consider.
Or more.
Or more.
Let's
Yes.
make sure we get that in there.
Or less if the scopes are up to us.
Or more.
Or more. Yes. In addition to that, we would receive additional annual revenue in our motor vehicle highway, local road and street funds, as well as additional revenue from the county's wheel and excise surtax that is deposited in the MVH fund. In this report, based on the calculations I believe we are looking at about $150,000 of additional revenue between those three sources. I will say, I do believe that number is conservative, but that is how the number is calculated. So that is the number that I used for the net benefit in the report. Then in terms of cost to the county, as I mentioned, there is maintenance costs that need to be considered. In the supporting tables of the document, that considers the repaving or chip seal type projects that Councilman Ison mentioned. And so annualized, those those three roads, we're looking at about $262,000 of expense to perform maintenances on those intervals. That we talked about this at the special meeting. We do have equipment and capabilities to perform most of the maintenance work on these roads, but the additional road mileage are going to necessitate 2 additional truck driver positions and an additional truck to our main fleet for winter maintenance purposes. The annualized cost estimate for that is about $154,000. So annualized costs, taking into account the $150,000 estimate of additional revenue in our highway funds, subtracting the $262,000, the annualized surface maintenance, road maintenance costs. In addition to that, the $154,000 of annualized resource costs, we're looking at a net annual deficit of $265,000. Now, we don't start at zero. We start at what the adjusted relinquishment agreement balance is, which was that $29,700,000 after taking into account the county finishing the projects that are currently under development. So that number divided by the annualized $265,000 deficit is where the 112-year break-even point comes into play. Now, there are some caveats to that. Bridge and culvert projects are not included in that maintenance. The similar concept to what we just discussed with a road reconstruction. Those are most likely capital projects, but in addition to that, depending on the condition of the, I'll speak to bridges in particular, there are different options available for reconstruction and rehabilitation, and any project of that scope is, again, based on what we've done in the past, a project that we would apply for federal funding for to help us get that finished. The large culverts that we would be taking on, we would do most of that work in-house, if not all. We have experience in doing that, so I'm not concerned about that. That helps immensely when you're talking about those capital costs. Now, all of these numbers, we're talking about a break-even point in 112 years, but the dollars in the report are essentially $22. Yes, there will be cost increases due to inflation, but there will also be annual revenue distribution increases as the county continues to grow, the way that those funding formulas work. Will one outpace the other in 112 years? I can't say I know, which is why I didn't really bother to try to guess and see the future.
Speak to the 11 million.
So in front of the commissioners today, we had 2 agreements. One is the actual relinquishment agreement for those roads. The other is a federal funding agreement for engineering design for the Smith Valley Road project. Those 2 agreements totaled about $24 million. The offer amount is $35 million. The additional 11 million-ish number would be primarily 2028 funding, which has not been programmed by NDOT yet. So what was in front of the commissioners today was that $24 million number, with the understanding that in later this year, when those 2028 funds are programmed, that is when the remaining 11 million would be put in contract and provided to the county.
So without contract, without that being in the contract, there's nothing to stop the state from pulling out once we accept this relinquishment. Or pulling out of that last 11 million. backing out of it.
Yeah, Jim, I said this today also. The people that Luke and I had these negotiations with, I believe 110% that they will follow through with this. But will those people still be in those positions at that time? That's my hang up right now. I mean, it was done in good faith. They were, I do believe 110% the people that we were negotiating with will make this happen, but are those people still going to be there? Am I willing to bet that? I wasn't this morning.
I've got to tell you, I mean, that is a deal breaker for, in my opinion. I didn't like it to begin with. It's like I said in the meeting, I think that there's a reason. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. There's a reason they want to relinquish these roads to us. We know that 2 of these 3 are most likely going to have to be widened probably in the next 5 to 10 years at roughly what, $1 million a mile to build new road.
It definitely more than that at this point. We're talking full reconstruction.
I think we're borrowing now for something that we're gonna have to pay dividends on in much near future before 112 years.
However, the loss of the 25 million will still have to be out provided in some way. If we don't take the 25 million,
But Ron, we don't lose it if we never had it.
well, we
So
still
the-
have to do it.
Right.
We still have to do Smith Valley, so we're gonna have to self-fund it, or we're gonna accept the allocation of 25 million and maybe not get the 11 million.
Yeah, I
Correct.
see a couple of things that it seems to me to be the law of diminishing returns for us. Price keeps coming down. And our responsibilities keep going up with this relinquishment. So it's just not headed in the right direction.
I think
Was there anybody present at the state this morning?
No, this was, no, the state has probably at least 50 of these relinquishment deals going on across the state concurrently, all running at the same time. So there's all kinds of different deals on the table, and it's not just Johnson County and the whole state. It is multiple counties, cities, municipalities all across the state they're working on. NDOT is trying to reduce their inventory of roads, period.
Understood.
And they are trying to just dole these out to communities or cities, municipalities. They did the east side of Franklin.
It reminds me of Levin's level 6 felons.
I said that too.
That's
the first thought
that's a
that
good
came to my
summary.
mind.
That's good.
Luke,
Yes.
what does it cost if we were to widen these roads, 144 and 252, which I think is probably inevitable? What is the cost right now to do that per mile?
In terms of widening, are you talking about 4
Adding,
lanes?
yeah,
or
4 lanes.
Improved 2 lane? Realistically, those cost estimates are going to be very similar to what we have for 144 or potentially for Smith Valley Road. Would be likely a different typical section, like as whereas Smith Valley has curbs. 144 could potentially have ditches. But I don't know that those numbers that we've been looking at for widening on Smith Valley Road are going to be that much different if we want to seriously pursue a 4-lane section of.
Right, but there's,
144.
so on your diagram or documents here, there's roughly between those 2 stretches that we're picking up, we're talking roughly 13 miles. And if we just, what, I mean, maybe 1.5 million per mile.
To a 4-lane section.
Yeah,
For comparison, the Smith Valley Road estimate is 55 million, and that's for about 3 miles of road.
okay. So we're talking 13 miles that I don't know that anybody up here could argue that that's coming, especially for 144. And we're wanting to take that on plus the maintenance upkeep for 20, what's guaranteed to be 24 million, might be 35, might not. I don't like it, but that's just me. I just wanted to point that out.
I think in the way that I've tried to look at this is that basically, let's go the full 35 million, say that we would get the full 35 million. That's money we're going to receive to take on responsibility of something now that belongs to the state. I would rather trust that to Johnson County without obligation to someone else than to be obligated to someone else. And I'm trying to think as a normal common sense person here that says, why do we want to take the chance of spending money on somebody else's problem and do it from Johnson County and end up down the road losing on the deal? I'd rather trust us to do it ourselves and come up with the funds to do it ourselves than to put ourselves in debt to someone that we don't really understand and know.
To come up with the 50 million for Smith Valley.
The 55 million, yes.
Right, it also places a priority that we may not share.
13.
I've had a tough time swallowing that from get go. That's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
I had a person tell me here about 2 months ago that sometimes you're put in the right place at the right time to make the right decisions for the right reasons. And I think this group is that. I think we're put here at the right time, right place for the right reasons. And I think that's why that we want to try to make this decision together, because I feel like we're all here for that reason. And that's why we're here.
You meet just where we all know as a council, I heard it this morning, you need some immediate decisions because you're up against a wall as far as making this decision. It's not something we can deliberate for a long time.
The commissioners are going to have to call a special meeting prior to April, or basically this week. We've got to call a special meeting to come to a decision.
All right, and we got less than 5 minutes do we need to have an additional meeting, or do you want something in 5 minutes?
I think we don't have time for an additional meeting. We're going to have to call a special meeting as it is to come to that conclusion. I've basically heard enough already to come to my conclusion as far as for a special meeting, and I don't know about Commissioner Walls, but
I've heard a lot.
yeah, so I think from this point, it's basically just the two of us, unfortunately, because Commissioner West is not here or available. So I think we've just got to come to that conclusion at that point. But I'd like to hear from
The only thing
the other two that I haven't heard anything.
yeah,
I'd like to ask,
I was gonna ask Pete, yeah,
is there any chance between now and the deadline that you could lock this down a little bit tighter with the unknown 11 million?
No, you won't, no.
No, they're not going to budge at this point.
We have run a few different options by NDOT within the last week or so, but have been unsuccessful in coming up with a solution that would address our concerns. Could that conversation continue? It absolutely could, but it would have to be an idea that we've not thought of yet, because we've pretty much thrown about everything at the wall, I think.
Yeah.
And I never look at anything as finished when it's not finished. I don't know that us coming to a conclusion right now finishes this anyway. I think if they really want to work with Johnson County to relinquish those roads, I would think they would have the ability and the motive to maybe renegotiate or come back to us regardless. So in my mind, I'm not looking at this as a dead regardless of what we
No,
conclude. I really don't.
It's just a difficult decision to look at this whole thing. I mean, it's a lot of money. But you've also got, on the other hand, you've got to pick up a lot of responsibility with this and cost.
And
I
some
don't think it would
unknown,
hurt to advise the state that, hey, we're gonna need to lock down that 35 million, otherwise we're not gonna be able to do it. Not that they might care, but at least let them know.
There's going to be a lot of negotiations going on
Okay.
the rest of this week. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, great, thank you.
John, Rob,
Well, regardless, if they lock down to 11 million to 35 million, I still oppose to it. I think it's gonna cost us more in the long run, widening 144 and everything else. I think it's better for us to do it on our own. I don't see no benefit other than,
But the one thing you got to keep in mind with that, that road will not be ours to widen.
right,
That will be NDOT's decision. I mean, we're talking about expansion on some of these roads. We won't have that option. We lose that option if we walk away from this deal. Because those roads will be ours. We can plan or do what we want to do with those roads. If NDOT retains control of those roads, they'll just shrug their shoulders and walk away. I mean, we can apply for funding, but like Luke said, it's gonna have to be federal money, and that is a very arduous process and very long process. And you're working not only against the state, you're working against the nation on those grant applications. Competing.
Well,
You're
I think
competing.
let's also consider I-69 and where those affect our roads. Do we really have any choice in that?
Nope.
So what's the difference in my view? That's I-69 is theirs, not ours, but yet we have to comply to what they want.
right.
Who says they can't make us comply on those roads?
We can reach out to our state reps.
Yeah.
You know, 144 is bad.
If we take those roads and they say they need to be widened, are we gonna be able to stop that?
With NDOT, yeah.
And then
But I think
why
the only
can't we
thing I'm
stop it
talking
with
about,
I-69?
we're just talking about control of that road. You know, if we do want, like I've heard here tonight, we want to widen those roads. We won't, it won't be us making that decision.
Won't be us paying for it either.
Oh, somehow you'll get noodled in here somehow, I'm sure. So, I mean, those are just options. There's been a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts on this, so a lot to consider.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, so I've started out, weeks ago, kind of in favor of the relinquishment. But I've appreciated the data conversation. And I've wavered now towards not being in favor of the relinquishment. My one piece is what Kevin just talked about, control, having been on the City of Franklin Council when the relinquishment occurred with NDOT and the city. It did allow us, the city, to control the timeline on improvements. And I think without a doubt, that the city having control has paid dividends because it's allowed the city to do many things that otherwise couldn't do. This is too large of scale, in my opinion. And that kind of outweighs that element of control. So at the moment, I am not in favor of progressing with the relinquishment, especially knowing there's an $11 million kind of bogey out there right now. So I would propose we look to solve the Smith Valley Road financial conundrum with our means and without the means of the relinquishment.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. It's still gonna be a tough decision, and I understand that, but we do appreciate the input, and that helps me quite a bit. And
I've been living this thing for the last 14 months.
my desire has been from day one, I wish Commissioner West was involved in this, because putting that burden on Kevin and I is really not fair to us. But I know Commissioner West is on vacation and not available at this point, but I wish there was some way we could delay this till he returned, and then that way the three commissioners could have some discussion prior to making this decision. Unfortunately, that's not going to be able to happen unless the state would see it in their hearts to give us an extension once we either turn it down or accept it. The best it's going to be is 1-to-1. So we're gonna go from there, because
Rock, paper, scissors.
I pretty well, and I guess since we're in a public meeting, I can pretty well say I've made my decision, and my decision would be not to take the relinquishment. So at this point in time, we're gonna have that discussion at a special meeting, but I might as well put that out there right now, good or bad. If anybody's got any comments, feel free to hit me at my email, and you can just tell me what you think like you usually do. I appreciate it. Anything else?
Thanks for all the work you guys put into this so far.
I tell you what, this last 2 years has just been a nightmare with everything that we have going. I appreciate all the council's doing and all the employees working like they have and all the time it's put in. I tell you what, and I've said this to Jason Miller several times, when the chips are down in this county, the people we have, the elected officials, the employees, they all step up and they do more than they have to do just to make sure that the county's protected. So thank you very much to everyone in Johnson County for all the input and everything you've done. So I appreciate it.
Move to adjourn.
Second, we're adjourned. We got out.